You'll do a much better recording. Alrighty. Hey, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Volunteer Engagement Webinar Series. For our first-time attendees, my name is Sydney Enns, and I'm the Director of Volunteer Engagement at the Tennessee Department of Disability and Aging. We've been doing this series for about 5 years now, and all presentations from way back in January 2020 to up to last month's sessions are on the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disabilities YouTube channel if you're interested in checking out anything that we've discussed in the past. By the end of the day tomorrow, I'll have this presentation posted along with a follow-up email with any session resources to everybody who has registered. I want to do my typical disclaimer that these webinars are being recorded, so please be sure to keep information confidential as we talk about volunteers, clients, partners in the communities. Try not to, single anybody out. Please be sure to put yourself on mute to reduce background noise out of respect for our speaker. And now is also the time to turn off your camera unless you want your face recorded. Totally up to you. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type those into the chat box and we'll address them as quickly as we can. Speaking of the chat box, we'll have an activity during today's session. So I want to make sure that everyone knows where the chat box is. So do me a favor and let us know how you're feeling today. What part of Tennessee are you from? Or if you're not from Tennessee and you're from another part of the country, let us know kind of where all is being represented today. We also encourage everyone, in addition to the chat, to use the reactions function. So that way our presenter can get that feedback and continue to be engaged throughout our discussion. It's also important to remember that everything we talk about on these webinars is not a requirement for you to implement in your program. However, we are going to be talking about best practices through research and experiences. So we encourage you to implement things that you feel will be valuable, as long as you have that support of your upper management and that buy-in from supervisors and things of that nature. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is essential to our programs so we can provide our services to everyone and anyone that's available in our communities. I'm excited for today's presentation, and I'll turn it over to our speaker to introduce herself and start our discussion. Everyone, please join me with the applause reaction and welcoming Natalie to the series. Natalie, thank you so much for speaking with our group today on such an important and valuable topic.
Thank you, Sydney. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Welcome to today's workshop. My name is Natalie Antoinette Johnson, and I am a trained educator with over 10 years in education. I've also worked for various not-for-profit organizations within the city that I live in. So I have over 10 years again, plus experience with working for not-for-profit organizations. Within one of my roles, I supported people with disabilities, and I was the supervisor the manager for the respite program. So the respite program is where we would take young people out who had disabilities out in the community to help them to participate in activities such as going to the movies, going to engage indoor arcades, doing different things within the activities that they might not have the opportunity to do. So I'm going to go ahead. Thank you again for coming. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with my presentation. Give me 1 sec, please. Okay, so today's presentation will be bridging hearts and minds, fostering equity, diversity, inclusion, and a sense of belonging in senior and disability support. Let's skip this because I went over a bit about what I do. So as we think about fostering equity, diversity, inclusion, and a sense of belonging in senior and disability support, the words that come to mind are equity, diversity, inclusion, sense of belonging. And I just want us to pause for a second and really think about what those words mean to us. So equity, diversity, inclusion, and a sense of belonging. As we support seniors and people with disability, we have to reflect and ask ourselves, how are we providing not only an equal environment, but how are we providing opportunities that focus on equity? How are we being diverse within our practices? how are we focusing on inclusion, and how are we providing a sense of belonging to those that we support? So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask you to share in the chat a bit about how we are doing this, or how you are doing it within your practice. We do have access to the chat, so I just want to welcome everybody to share within the work that you do. How are you basically supporting equity, diversity, inclusion, and a sense of belonging? And maybe it's just one word that comes to mind. So you don't have to write a whole sentence, just one word that may come to mind. And if you don't want to type in the chat, please feel free to also, I think you can unmute your mic, or you can raise your hand and we can call you by name if you raise your hand. Do you use the raise hand function so everyone's not going at the same time? So I'll just read one of the comments. We work with seniors, so even as we go digital, oh, 1 second, we make sure we still have paper applications. That is very important, because working with seniors, we have to teach them about, technology, and not everyone is able to access those technologies. I know for me, from my personal experience, someone who takes care of their father who is a senior, I usually go with my father and I do a lot of those applications for him. So my personal experience of seeing my father being able to do certain things, and now with technology coming, he's not able to access those forms. I have to usually go out to the community with him to show him what to do. So another comment says, having an open door policy, including all abilities. Yes, that's very important. Thank you for sharing that. Everyone is welcome to volunteer at Bethany. Thank you for sharing that as well. Everyone is welcome. So that's inclusion. Being welcome to all. Senior citizen centers as places that form communities of love. So going back right to sense of belonging, making sure that seniors can access community centers and groups and programming that really provide them with that space where they feel safe and welcome is very important as well. Love and kindness for all clients, which is very important. So as we talk about providing a sense of belonging, love and kindness is very important. And I will go a bit into that into my presentation as well, making sure that everybody feels loved and the kindness is there, making sure that we are providing that safe space again for the seniors that we are supporting. MIFA welcomes all and attends engagement events for all ages in all communities, races, and religions. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Thank you, everyone, for sharing in the chat. I really appreciate that. As we think about equity, diversity, inclusion, and sense of belonging, it's very important that we know that equality does not equal equity. So for example, as you see this picture, what are you seeing in the picture? What do you think? And how would you feel if you were the person in the wheelchair on the right-hand side, well, I guess on your right hand, my left side? We're the equality side. So I'm going to open it up, because usually when I do workshops, I like it to be a little interactive, and I'm going to open up. If anyone would like to share as they're reflecting on this picture, please raise your hand or maybe unmute. I would have to stop sharing my screen to see. So Sydney, if you can help me, if you can see if anyone's raising their hand. See.
Sure. No one's raised their hand yet, but I definitely see in that picture that equality isn't equal for everyone for all abilities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll share a bit about when I saw this picture. I think for me, as I reflected in having my experience in supporting my father, who is a senior, as well as supporting people with disabilities, one of the things is accessibility. Accessibility is very important. And I use this example, for example, imagine going to the movie theaters and we're going to watch a movie with our families, and someone with a disability, will say someone in a wheelchair. So even though the movie theaters is accessible, right? It's basically there. It's equality because the movie theater is right there. Everyone can go to the movie theater. But when we think about equity, does it provide the opportunities, different opportunities for people to really access the movie theater? So think about going to a movie theater where there's only steps, there's only stairs that you can walk up. Someone in a wheelchair would not be able to get at those stairs unless there was a wheelchair access, unless there was a lift, or someone may have to carry them up. But as we think about equity, we also have to think about access, and we have to take into people's different situations, their intersectionalities, and their lived experiences as we think about the difference between equality and equity. So I like to say equality does not equal to equity. And I'm going to pause a bit and see if anyone has anything to share, if they've had any experiences, or maybe they've supported a senior and they saw that the equity piece wasn't there. And I know within your organization you guys do focus on equality and equity, but if there's any areas that you think when it comes to equity, just any examples. So I'll ask, does anyone have any example? Oh, I think I see. You can
Yeah, there
type it
was
in
a
the chat. Feel free to type.
Yeah, there is a comment in the chat. Everyone has different needs and needs support based on their needs.
Correct. Yes, I would agree, Janet. Everyone does have different needs. And that's where the intersectionality piece comes in. That's where we have to look at individual situations. Because, for example, someone can have the same disability, but the need resources that we have to provide for them is different for each person. So it's looked upon on an individual basis. I like the image when they add the third option of justice. No offense. I like that too, Blanche, when they add that justice piece. I think the justice piece for me personally reminds us of the advocating piece. That a part of supporting seniors and people with disabilities is that we have to sometimes advocate on their behalf. We have to also make sure that they have a voice in advocating. So we have to provide resources, and we have to also access community supports that can help them to advocate on their behalf as we advocate for them as well. So that justice piece is really, really important. Thank you for sharing that. Jason, sorry. Thank you for sharing that, Jason.
I know a lot of our senior centers do day trips or overnight trips with a lot of their participants. And I know our directors do a lot of research to make sure that everything is accessible for everyone who's going on those trips, whether they have it on wheelchairs, walkers, canes, just to make sure that it's safe and everyone can have a really good time together.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that research aspect of it, Sydney, because in my own experience of supporting people with disabilities, there are times when I've personally have experienced that when we're taking out the young people or people with disabilities out in the community and we speak about accessibility, is that sometimes that accessibility is actually not available. So, making sure that we do our due diligence and checking to make sure that when we are going out or we're doing something in the community and we're supporting people, that wherever we're bringing them in the community, they can actually have the same access as everybody else. And I know that where I live, they're working on that accessibility piece to make sure that all organizations, all companies, all businesses have accessibility there. Okay, we have someone with their hand up. Is it Frena? Sorry if I
Donna Farina, yeah. What I was going to say, I used to work in rec therapy as well as coordinating volunteers, and we would take them on overnight trips to like a hotel. And we found that we could take a lift, we could take a nurse with us, we could take all the equipment that we needed. But when we got there, the bed, you couldn't put the lift under the bed because the bed was a box frame. And we never thought to ask that. So we ended up having to do a 4-man lift into the bed, but we did, but it was something that needed to be well planned out ahead of the time. And we did mention it too, that when they have a handicapped room, that they need to have it available for people that are in lifts, that, because we have a bus, so we could easily bring the lift on the bus, but when we got there, you couldn't put under the bed. So it was just
Yeah.
something to think about.
Thank you for that example. And as you say that, I remember one of the things, so within my own experience, Donna, when I supported people with disabilities, I remember bringing the people to the mall. And, when we had a young person in a wheelchair and the washroom was so small because he had to use the washroom. So we had to bring him in. But the washroom door itself, to get in, it was really, to navigate that. And I really we did mention that as well. But, I look back at the financial cost for organizations to make sure that their buildings are accessible. And when I think about that justice piece that comes in that Jason mentioned, that it really takes a whole entire community, including the government, supporting and making sure that organizations and companies can build or revise their buildings and places to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, right? I also think about someone who may not have sight, right? And they need a braille, and that's not always available. So things like that is what I think about, that accessibility piece, where we're still working on that as we, as a community, focus on providing that sense of belonging and that safe space for people with disabilities and seniors. Anything anyone wants to add? Okay, I'll continue with the presentation. And thank you for everyone that shared. So diversity, the fact of many different types of things or people being included in something, a range of different things or people. Cultural diversity, for example, what we see on television, does it reflect ethnic and cultural diversity of the country? Ethnic diversity as well, what we see. So the ethnic diversity of the country as a benefit, as we support seniors and people with disabilities. From a diverse perspective and provide a sense of belonging, we must think about lived experiences, intersectionalities, abilities, cultures, ethnicities, inclusion, and emotional safety. So the emotional safety piece is very, very important, because we want to make sure that as we are focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion and sense of belonging, it is very important that people feel safe. If people do not feel safe, then they're not going to be comfortable in that environment that they're in. They're not going to be able to be themselves, because one of the most important things, according to Maslow's theory, is a safety piece. So when we practice from a diverse lens, we are acknowledging the difference of each person. We are providing emotional safety, which starts from listening, explicitly valuing differences and diversity, also learning from lived experiences of people with disabilities, and fostering a safe and trusting relationship. There are many types of diversity. So we talk about diversity, we talk about ability diversity, age, neurodiversity, socioeconomic status. These are things that we have to look at, mental health, external diversity, and etc. There's so many things that we have to look at when we are understanding diversity. And when we look at barriers that people face and seniors face as we're supporting seniors, and I'm going to use my example again because it's my personal story and my personal example from seeing my father being very mobile, and then seeing as he aged, the assistance that he needed, right? And I think about people who may not have a support system such as my dad has, where my dad has, he can call me, I can go there, I can take him out, I can, say, okay, dad, come inside the car, I'll take you where you need to go. But also about people who may not have that support system. So how can we, as as people that work with them, support them? What resources can we provide for them? And Sydney, maybe you can share about transportation, because I know that one of the barriers that a lot of seniors experience, and I'm going again based on my own personal experience, my work experience, as well as my personal experience. I know, like, for me, I remember one time when my dad had to go to the specialist and I had to work. and his friend was supposed to pick him up, and the friend called me and said he couldn't make it, so we had to reschedule that appointment. But my dad had myself and he had a friend, but there are others that do not have that kind of support. So transportation is a big barrier when it comes to supporting seniors with or without disability. So I just want to know, how do you guys manage that?
So here in Tennessee, we have the human resource agencies that do a lot of transportation, especially for those who have mobility issues. We also have a program called My Ride, or Volunteer Assisted Transportation, to where we have volunteers who will pick up individuals. You have to, schedule your ride, and then a volunteer will come and pick up those individuals and take them to grocery store, doctors, get their hair done, things like that. The big difference between the two, at least it's my understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Volunteer assisted transportation, you have to have less mobility issues. Like, we don't have volunteers who transport people who are in wheelchairs due to liability. So it's more people who are more mobile for the volunteer assisted transportation. We also have some state programs through our Medicaid office that if someone qualifies for Medicaid, they can get some transportation assistance. Definitely still a barrier, 100%, even though we have a few resources here in Tennessee. It's one of the community, when we did a needs assessment, that was, I believe, either the first or second biggest barrier that was identified for older adults across the state.
Yeah, so I think I would definitely agree that, as much as we provide transportation, that's a really big barrier. And now even just to go to the grocery store, my dad will say, okay, come and get me to go to the grocery store. And again, I reflect on the fact that he has that support, but others who don't have that support, just even going to the grocery store to pick up groceries, things that they used to be able to do that has been now taken away from them. So that loss turns into a grief. So grief is not only when you experience death. Grief is any sense of loss. So the loss that you can't do what you used to be able to do, or you can't go where you used to be able to go. So, as we support seniors, that it's so important to acknowledge that as well. Someone has, I think, Nancy, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. Thank you. This has been, I'm sorry I was late, but it's been fascinating. I really love it. As an active senior and someone that has had lifelong dual sensory issues, not completely deafblind, but in that spectrum, I find access to systems that are low or no cost are really, of course, the phone ones, Hang on a second. It's super loud because of my hearing loss. Okay. I apologize. But systems that are low or no cost are really hard to get into. Long wait lists, even though the sight and sound, if I'm not physically have issues, that can disqualify me. So what I have done for myself in being proactive, and maybe you could expand this, is being really up on technology and having those items and learning to navigate the shared ride situations like Uber and Lyft, and having those as alternatives, so I can meet my own needs. But that has given me a lot of freedom, because someone asked me the other day, a social worker, on what was the most difficult about being dual sensory disabilities. And I said, the freedom to go where I want, which was just mentioned, when you want, how you want, feeling safe, huge. And those things are, I just find that if I had more aid with people teaching me to do stuff, that would be good, if I hadn't had to struggle on figuring it out on my own. And I'll end with that.
Thank you for sharing that, Nancy. I think that's so important. You make such valid points. And you provide us with the example of, of the challenges that many face out there as they try to navigate the systems and they try to maintain their independence and interdependence. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, anybody else would like to share?
There's been a couple of comments in the chat. So for this is a senior center, can't provide transportation, but we have a handful of members who we keep on call for someone if someone needs a ride. It's not something that we can coordinate, but we can get volunteers in contact with people who need a ride. This gives people who need a ride a free, easy option to get around and gives our volunteer members a way to feel that they are needed in the community. And we also have a Middle Tennessee region who's surveying people who have difficulties accessing transportation because of age or disability. And then she has her contact information in the chat box if anyone wants to reach out to her in the Middle Tennessee area. And then we had a question, does all of Tennessee have van transportation through the resource offices? Sandra, I'll get back to you on that question. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, thank you everyone that shared and commented and added something in the chat as well. So I just want to say, when we understand these barriers, we can better foster a sense of belonging, like how we're having that open dialogue and that conversation right now, talking about some of those barriers. It's very important as we basically support people and seniors that may or may not have disabilities. So as we reflect on inclusion, when supporting seniors and people with inclusion, what matters is that social inclusion. So social inclusion is very, very important because as people, we need to have that social environment. We need to connect with others. And I can say that based on my experiencing and seeing again, working with people with disability and working with supporting and seniors, that sometimes that sense of loss is there where they do feel isolated, right? Because you can't do what you used to do. But as providers, we have to make sure that we are providing opportunities for that social inclusion. That can be setting up a group, making sure that, if they're in a senior's home or if they're coming to visit for a session, making sure that other seniors are there, other people are there, just making sure that they're around people, because it is very difficult when you feel that you don't have anyone. It's also important that we are consulting with our clients and we're including them in the decisions that are being made. Oftentimes, decisions are made without the client's input, but I do believe that when we are able to include the people that we support, rather it be seniors, that when you're providing them with a voice. So they have a voice and they also have a lot of opportunities to share what the program should be like, what kind of program they want. And that helps us to create space that is also accessible for all. So as I think about inclusion, one of the things that we don't want to miss is the cultural connections. Because we all come from different cultural backgrounds, it's very important that we reflect on that cultural connection. Access, how are we providing clients with a voice? So in everything that we're doing, as we reflect on diversity, inclusion, and a sense of belonging, we have to make sure that seniors have a voice in everything that we do, that we are listening to them, and not just listening, but that we are actively listening to them, and that if they feel voiceless, we are taking that time to create that space where they do not feel voiceless. So, if it's a support group, and maybe you guys do this in your program already, you have support groups for seniors to attend. It maybe can just be a games night that you're having for the seniors to attend, and making sure that as you plan these groups, if you plan these gatherings, focusing on that accessibility piece and focusing on that equity piece is very important. So again, in everything that we do, we are always advocating. We're always looking at it from a lens of advocating, and we're also teaching seniors how to also advocate for themselves. And that's where we're also being able to provide that voice and helping them to have that voice in everything that we do. As we reflect on inclusion when supporting seniors and people, we want to make sure, again, that that sense of belonging is there. a sense of belonging, the subjective feeling of deep connection with social groups, physical places, and individual and collective experience is a fundamental human need. Again, I want to say that again. It is a fundamental human need that predicts numerous mental, physical, social, economic, and behavioral outcomes. And that is taken from the National Institute of Health and also connects back to the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And I'm just going to pause there for a second. Does anyone have anything to add to that or any experiences? I want to touch a bit on the cultural aspect. So as we provide a sense of belonging, it's very important that we touch on that cultural aspect, and we are taking into consideration everybody's culture, their different cultures that they're coming from, because in our cultures, we do things differently, but making sure that we're providing that voice and that safe space, that when we are building programs, we're building programs based on a culturally responsive pedagogy. That means that we're looking at from the seniors that we serve, we are basically making sure that everybody's included and we are doing different things as it pertains to their culture.
So I have an example of this, of an error that I made. We always have a program I used to work for. We always had a training in the fall, and I never took into consideration other religious holidays like Yom Kippur, for example. And we scheduled a training during Yom Kippur, and we had some volunteers contact us and say, hey, we want to attend this training, but we're not able to, based on this religious holiday. And it had never occurred to me. And now every time we look at trainings, we make sure that we're looking at calendars of all different cultures and religious backgrounds to make sure that we're not intentionally, or this was unintentional, of course, interfering with anyone's personal beliefs, so we can get the most people to be engaged in our trainings as possible.
Thank you for sharing that, Sydney. And I think it's so important. It's a learning experience, right? Because we like, I think we've all done something similar to that, but we learn through it. And then when we learn, we actually revamp, how we do things, and making sure that you mentioned the cultural calendar. And I know that within my practice within education, each year we're given a cultural calendar. So that when we're planning, we have to technically look at that so that we're not planning events and things around different cultures. We kind of have to make sure that we're taking those cultures in consideration, which is so very important. Thank you for sharing that. So this is a video on the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I'm going to play the video, and in the meantime, I'm also going to get my charger to charge my laptop as well. So give me a sec. You're going to see me move away from the computer. I am still here, but I'm going to play the video, and while you are listening, and if you have questions, we can answer some of that. So
according to Maslow,
if you cannot hear the video, please let me know. I'm just going to press play. Sorry.
According to Maslow, human needs were arranged in the form of a hierarchy, with physiological survival needs at the bottom, and the more creative and intellectually oriented self-actualization needs at the top. Needs lower down in the hierarchy must be satisfied before individuals can attend to higher needs. Our most basic need is for physical survival, and this will be the first thing that motivates our behavior. Physiological needs are biological requirements for human survival, such as air, food and drink, shelter, clothing, warmth and sleep. Once an individual's physiological needs are satisfied, the needs for security and safety become salient. For example, emotional security, financial security, law and order, and freedom from fear. After physiological and safety needs have been fulfilled, the third level of human needs is social and involves feelings of love and belonging. Belonging refers to a human emotional need for interpersonal relationships, affiliating, connectedness, and being part of a group. Examples of belonging needs include friendship, intimacy, trust, acceptance, receiving and giving affection, and a sense of connection. Esteem needs are the fourth level in Maslow's hierarchy, and include self-worth, accomplishment, and respect of others, and the need to be a unique individual. Self-actualization needs are the highest level in Maslow's hierarchy and refer to the realization of a person's potential, self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth, and peak experiences. Individuals may perceive or focus on this need very specifically. For example, one individual may have a strong desire to become an ideal parent. In another, the desire may be expressed athletically. For others, it may be expressed in paintings, pictures, or inventions. Although Maslow did not believe that many of us could achieve true self-actualization, he did believe that all of us experience transitory moments, known as peak experiences. Such moments associated with personally significant events such as childbirth, sporting achievement, and examination success are difficult to achieve and maintain consistently.
Okay, so I'm gonna basically go back to the video and just imagine someone
According
not
to
having
Maslow,
that love and belonging, after having that for a while. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen a bit because I'm going to come on screen and I want to talk about, the importance of that belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, sense of connection, right? Just imagine someone again, all that being taken away from them and what that actually feels like when that is taken away from them. It's lonely. It's basically, it interrupts their life and they question things, right? That security. So it doesn't matter who we are. We all need to have a sense of belonging. And our goal as we support people, as we support seniors, is to make sure that we are ensuring that our environments that we support seniors and people with disabilities in, we're providing that sense of belonging to them. Because by not having a sense of belonging, that can also lead to a lot of stress. People can question their identity. They can question, who they are. So it's very important. I'm stressing that sense of belonging because all of us, no matter, where we are around the world, we try to find communities, but there may be others who may have some difficulty finding some of those communities. So how are we helping them? And how are we advocating for them? How are we basically making sure that we can support them? So what are some of the things that you guys are doing within your practice or within the environment that you work in to make sure that people are feeling that security? Maybe it is a small group that you have where people come together. Maybe it is, connecting seniors to resources. It can be a lot of different things as we think about that love and belonging piece. And I know that was mentioned in the comments when we first started, that love and belonging, making sure that love and kindness, someone mentioned love and kindness. And love and kindness is so important because it does make a difference in the lives of seniors and people that we support with disabilities, to know that they are cared about, to know that, that they can come to us, that there's a place or there's a community center, there's an organization that they can go to that can provide them with those resources and that can provide them with a safe space.
I mean, everything
I'm
that
just
you just,
pausing to see. Oh, yes, thank you. I was
sorry.
pausing to see if anyone has anything to add.
I would say everything that you just mentioned is all of our senior centers across the state. And I know we have many, many senior center directors represented on the call today. And I talk to them pretty frequently, and they say that they're the seniors that come to their center, their family. And they do their best to provide all the resources and information that they need to help meet the needs of all their participants. While it's hard sometimes to find those particular resources, we're all kind of a no wrong door method, to where if I don't know the answer, I'm going to ask Natalie if she knows the answer. And if Natalie doesn't know, she's going to ask someone in her network. So we're a really kind of well-oiled machine in that way.
And I love that. I love that, Sydney, because that shows the community piece, right? That community piece of connecting and using the community and using people within the community or within the organization as resources. because we have a lot to offer when it comes to the resources. And you may know something that I don't know, or you may know of a support program that can help somebody that I may not be aware of. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I will go back to sharing the presentation. Okay, so now we're going to just listen to a video on belongingness.
A healthy adult human is able to survive apart from other people. Yet, across people, society, and eras, we as humans consistently seek inclusion over exclusion, membership over isolation, and acceptance over rejection. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about the need to belong, an idea originally proposed by psychologists Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary. This is the idea that one of the most powerful, universal, and influential human drives is to form and maintain at least a minimum amount of positive, lasting, and impactful social connections, and that it is innately prepared in us to do so. So, unlike Freud, who regarded sexuality and aggression as the major driving psychological forces, or some behaviorists who consider each newborn to come into this world with a blank slate, this theory depicts that as human beings, we are naturally driven towards forming and sustaining belongingness. These researchers likened the need to belong to be just as fundamental as other basic needs like hunger and thirst. A person who hasn't eaten will feel hungry, but a person who has had very little contact with others will feel unhappy and lonely. The need to belong should stimulate goal-directed activity designed to satisfy it. People should show tendencies to seek out and cultivate possible relationships, at least until they've reached a minimum level of social contact and relatedness. Deficits in belongingness is correlated with many ill effects, including psychological and physical health problems, along with behavioral pathologies ranging from eating disorders all the way to suicide. So, I wanted to give this really quick overview of the belongingness theory, because especially during this time of quarantine, where nearly all of us are physically isolated from one another, it's very likely that we may start to feel sad and lonely, and these are totally normal feelings. It's important that we maintain friendships and support family and friends when we're able to, and we'll all get through this together. If you want to learn about this theory more in depth, I've linked some articles down in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Okay, so thank you for that video. That video I found, and I found it very interesting because I know he spoke about the quarantine, but we're no longer in a quarantine. But a lot of the points that he mentions and he focuses on basically belongingness and how important it is. I think it still resonates. It still resonates because as people are aging, we age, we experience different situations, different things happen, and it's not always the same things that happen to everybody. So as people age, that belongingness is so important that they have that support. Does anyone have anything to share from any questions? I'll pause right now for any questions or anything that they may want to share before I go on to the next slide, because it's going to be open for discussion for our next slide.
I know I'm talking a lot, but this is such a great topic. Not only is it kind of for seniors and the people that we serve, but I know a lot of us out there just in the aging network feel like we're going it alone, whether it be senior centers not knowing exactly like what their community needs. We're all here to support one another to be able to help and support the people that we serve. So if you feel like you're going it alone, volunteer engagement, whatever, like just all of us, the 60 or so people who've been on this call today are here to support one another and help in any way that we can. So we all feel like we belong and that we're doing everything that we can to help the people that we serve.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sydney. And I wanted to add to what you said. I want to add that don't be afraid to ask for help, because when we ask, that's when we're able to get that resource, to get that access. Because sometimes it's sometimes, you know, you don't always want to share everything that you're going through. But I think, as I hear Sydney speak, you guys have a great community and great supports. And even if you know somebody, it may not be you, but maybe it's somebody that you know that needs that support. Please share, because sometimes information, help, and resources, it's just a matter of sharing something with somebody else who may need those supports. So we ourselves may not need it, but someone in our network may need those supports, and they may not know where to go, but you may have that answer for them. So I just wanted to add that, Sydney, as you shared, which I think is very important, to have a community that people can go to, which is very, very critical. So we must consider, as we reflect on providing a sense of belonging for seniors and people living with disabilities, we must consider equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we've kind of gone through that. And I wanted to just know if anyone has anything that they'd like to share at this time before I go on to the next slides. What is said in the video? I'll just read in the comments. Question: are new people welcomed? An overwhelming situation for a new person, and I have witnessed existing cliques of people can be unintentionally unwelcoming, adding to the stress of adjustment. What do you all do to support this situation? Great question. And thank you for that question, Nancy. Okay. We talk openly at our senior center about everyone needing socialization and friendship. We ask our seniors to please come see us, even if it's just for a cup of coffee. We routinely conduct non-usage calls to make sure our seniors know we're thinking about them and miss them. So, so important. Thank you for adding that, Jenny, because I love that you guys do the calls. And the calls are so, so important. You know, you mentioned that those calls to let the seniors know that you're thinking about them, and the routine. So setting up maybe a volunteer outreach committee that does all the calls, that connects with the seniors when they don't see them, that checks in with them, because everyone won't be able to do the same things, but maybe having a committee that specifically does that. So thank you for sharing that, Jenny. I'll go back to another comment from Janet from the video. What he said in the video is important. Having a sense of belonging in our community is critical to our health and happiness. Thank you for sharing that, Janet. Anything else anybody would like to add? Okay, thank you, everybody.
We do have someone who has their hand raised. Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry.
This is Steve Thomas. This concept is not new. Genesis 3:18 says, God says, it is not good for man to be alone, and so he created him a female. So belonging goes way back in terms of foundational stuff.
Thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to jump on that comment. I agree. I think that we are created to be in community. Community is important, rather if it's a group, a small support group, and rather if it is a, you know, especially when we talk about aging. And as I said, again, I can use my personal example because I do care for my father, who is a senior. And, you know, that socializing piece, being in a group, is so, so, so important to him. It just helps. It really does help the situation as he ages, you know, that connection. And again, my personal experience. I can only draw from my personal experience, from my work experience in my personal life, and seeing when my dad used to go just, go on his bike and just ride to go see his friends. And I remember last year summer, I said, "Oh, Dad, can you ride your bike?" And he laughed. Because we both laughed because we knew the answer. He can't ride his bike again, but being able to connect with his friends and getting him there, myself driving and getting him there is so important. But even the community, like, we are created to be in community, and community was set up for that, for us to kind of go back into community. And I want to encourage everybody again, it may not personally be you that may be feeling a sense of loss again, but maybe it's someone that that's aging, because as we age, you know you can kind of feel that community is not there. But I know that you guys have a great community, but share the resources within the community with people. I see a comment here. I think I read that one from Jenny already. I'll go to Nancy. I like to remind caregivers and folks that seem to be overwhelmed from time to take care of themselves too. How they are doing, what are they doing for themselves? That's so, so important, Nancy. And I had to learn to do that, because I'll let you know that when your parents start to age, and you are taking care of them, and you have work, you have your children, you have your daily duties, you can become overwhelmed. And it's very, very important to make sure that we are caring for ourselves, because in order for us to care for others, we have to care for ourselves as well. So Nancy, thank you so much for making that point, because I think it's so important. Okay. I am going to play, this is the last video. I'm going to play this video, and it really shows how, when that sense of belonging is created, that safe space, how people can flourish, how seniors can get involved in the community, in programs. And that is what we're working towards, right? Making sure that we are providing those opportunities for seniors to get involved, and to also find a way that they can also help create programs as well for others.
I knew right away, this is the place I want to be. I looked at this room, this apartment, and I said, this is it. Generally, I had a feeling of belonging all of a sudden. I got a good feeling about this place. In all the years that I've been here, I have not been sorry one time. I became active in menu planning committee, dining services committee, and eventually someone suggested I should try and run for resident council, which I did, and I was elected. Then someone urged me to take an art course, which I did. I had never painted before. I ended up painting some paintings by the truly great artists of the world, and I have many of them on display. And then also, there was a piano in the lobby, which interested me very much, and I specialized in the music of the 30s and 40s. I played quite a few times, and people seem to like what I do, so I keep doing it. You have to have a purpose. I'm fortunate in the sense that I am able to do what I do. I have peace of mind being where I am at this time of my life.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So that's one of the videos, and I really was able to connect with that video as we talk about sense of belonging, because it shows that when people belong, when people feel safe, when we provide that equity, when we provide those environments that foster community, people, seniors, people with disability have the opportunities to really flourish. But sometimes all people need are the opportunities. So I just wanted to share that with you. We also have to look at barriers. Regardless of where we live, many of the barriers are universal, such as financial barriers, economic factors, housing stability, transportation, and loneliness, which we spoke about many of those already. As we focus on providing a sense of belonging, these are some of the things that are very, very important to make sure that we are providing, and we are making sure that people, the seniors, feel their autonomy, psychological safety, their independence, their interdependence, making sure that they're respected and that their dignity, that they are holding on to their dignity. Also making sure that we are providing opportunities for them to develop a healthy self-esteem. That inclusion piece, we're inviting them, we are including them in the planning process, not only listening to seniors and people with disabilities, but that active listening piece where we're actually acknowledging what they're saying and we're trying to connect with with their lived experience, which is very important. Making sure that we are operating from a culturally relevant lens and that financial implications and preparations that also comes intact. Our goal is to ensure seniors and people with disability feel safe, included, as we provide a sense of belonging for each person. We are all members of families, sporting teams, hobbyists, spiritual groups, charities. And if we're all members of groups like that, remember that as people age, they can feel a disconnect. Our job is to make sure that we are helping them as we are in this field. I don't really think it's an option. It is a must. We must try our best to make sure that we are helping seniors and people with disabilities to have that sense of belonging. We're providing that space for them, because imagine having all of the space. You could do your mobile, you could do everything, and all of a sudden, in 4 months, those things are taken away from you, right? That's difficult to deal with. So a sense of belonging cannot be separated from our physical or our mental health. Seniors and people living with disability need to be provided with opportunities to connect with other people, be in groups, share their ideas, thoughts, and help contribute to programs that are serving them. The impact of community and belonging on seniors and people with disabilities. It provides them with a social engagement and emotional well-being, mental stimulation and cognitive health, physical health, longevity, support systems, and a safety net. How can we cultivate community? How can we cultivate belonging for seniors and people with disabilities? There are groups that people can join. So making sure that those who we are supporting, as Sydney mentioned, that networking with each other. So maybe someone is aware of a group that someone can join. So making sure that the people that we support and seniors that may have a disability, or just seniors overall, have access to support groups and they can connect with each other. Even if it's not per se an organized group that's set up, maybe it's just getting seniors together to cook for the night, or to do a game night, to play a game of cards. Doing activities that they can come out where they're not always going to be in the house is really important. Also, as we watched in the video, the last video that I played, providing opportunities for volunteer, providing opportunities for seniors to be in leadership, providing opportunities for people with disabilities to be in leadership roles to also serve, and looking into support services. As well, it was mentioned here about the technology. So maybe it's that you're going to have a night, an evening, or you're going to have a 4-day workshop or you can have a 4-week, 4 days may be too long, but 4 weeks, where they meet on Saturday for 2 hours to learn about technology, to learn about the new technology that's coming out, to learn about recordings, or to learn how to access. So a lot of groups do that, having a technology night where someone comes in and actually does workshops to teach seniors how to navigate technology. Taking classes and joining a hobby groups and attending religious and spiritual gatherings are very important. So making sure that we're helping seniors to access those programs. And that is the end of my presentation, but just a bit about what happened to me in July 2023. So there is temporary disability and there's a permanent disability. Last year, July 2023, I ended up being in the ICU, and because I had a brain bleed. My whole entire life changed. It was just a headache that I got out of nowhere. I've never had a headache before I got a headache, and I knew to call 911. I knew my body, I knew something was wrong. So I ended up calling 911, and I ended up in ICU for 3 weeks, and I had to go to rehab. Also, to make sure that I was okay. They had to monitor me. I wasn't able to go outside. I ended up, my license, my driver's license was also taken away because they wanted to make sure that cognitively I was okay to drive. And I share this to say that there is people that may experience a temporary disability, and within a day, their life can be changed. Their whole entire life can change. I'll tell you that what helped me to get through what I was experiencing was the team that I had. It was the medical team that I had. It was the social workers that I had. It was my physiotherapist that I had. It was the wellness coach that I had that was assigned to me from the hospital, because it was overwhelming. There was a lot of tears because I'm fairly young, and to experience that, it was very emotional for me to experience that. And it changed my whole entire life in the sense that, I never had a disability before, but I know what it's like to have a disability. And I also know what it's like to have your life change within seconds. So I can say that as I went through that, my story is not for me. My story is to share with others and to educate and empower and inspire where I can. And as you go about supporting people with disabilities and seniors, I just want you to listen to their stories, because as you listen, it's very important that some people just want you to listen to them. And I'm really grateful for my psychotherapy that was assigned to me, because it was, as I said, it was very emotional for me. It was a very emotional time. The healing journey, I'm actually still healing, but going through that and being off of work, which I've never been off of work before, but the doctor said you have to be off work to heal properly. It was a shock. It was definitely a shock. So experiencing a disability, it can change your whole life. But I can say that the number one thing that helped me was my support system, not only my family and my friends, but those who worked in the community. And I wouldn't have been able to get through what I've been through without people working in the community, people such as you who are volunteering and who are working in the community. So I want to let you know that what you do when you're out in the community and you're working for these organizations and you are supporting seniors and you're supporting people with disability, the work that you do is very, very important. And I wanted to personally share that as I wrap up the session. So if there's any questions, I'm more than willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it. We had a couple comments coming in through the chat. So one person listening to this makes me proud of my seniors. We have many widows, and we are a big family that looks out for each other and always willing to help their friends. Another comment, going to answer my own question to what I have done in the past on welcoming others. I was a greeter to new people in a grief support group. I welcomed a new person and sat near them for reassurance factor, then a follow-up call with permission. This is a valuable volunteer portion that can give purpose, a twofer reward. I like that a lot. I know we're about 3 minutes over, which is not a problem because this was extremely valuable. Thank you so much again, Natalie, for sharing your time and your knowledge and your story with us. Everyone, please feel free to continue to type information into the chat. If everyone want to hang out just a couple more minutes, just a couple updates that I have, I'll share this in the follow-up as well. But just a couple little things. Tennessee has a new scholarship for anyone who's interested in obtaining their Certified Volunteer Administrator credential, their CVA. The scholarship, the application closes tomorrow, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. But basically what it is, it's a scholarship fund that will help pay for that exam fee. So I'm going to put some information, a link to more information into the chat box in case anyone is interested in learning more about that scholarship. Let me find the chat box real quick. We also have the CVA study group. So if anyone's interested in learning more about the CVA, please let me know. Again, that's the Certified Volunteer Administrator. It's the only internationally recognized credential for the volunteer engagement field. I also wanted everyone to save the date. This is coming up in February, so plenty of time to plan. For the Tennessee Conference on Volunteerism and Service Learning. It is through Volunteer Tennessee. This will be February 16th to the 18th of 2025 in Franklin, Tennessee. As always, I want to share that in addition to the Conference on Volunteerism and Service Learning, there is the Tennessee Governor's Volunteer Star Awards. I always forget the volunteer portion of this. But basically, every county can nominate a volunteer to get recognized by the governor and the first lady. So I encourage everyone who has volunteers to nominate them. Again, it's per county, so we could have 95 representatives. Every county has a coordinator for their Governor Star Award. So please feel free to reach out to that coordinator and get your person nominated. Another award, the Tennessee Department of Disability and Aging just released the Technology Trailblazer Award. So Natalie was talking a lot about how technology is helping for multiple different ways. So if there's someone that you know who's really helped in your area, maybe it's someone at your senior center, maybe it's a program that you have. But if there's anyone that you know is a trailblazer for technology, I'm going to put in the chat box the nomination form for that award. We always want to get awards, right? Let's get some accolades. Let's brag on ourselves. Something that it's very hard for me to do. And I know from experience, many of you all don't like bragging about yourself, but now's the time to do it. And then last but not least, we have our last webinar of the series, Thursday, September 19th, same time, same place. We're going to be talking about the Volunteer Staff Partnership, and Kathy Oakes with the American Cancer Society is going to come and talk with us. She was initially scheduled for March, but we had to cancel that one, so we've rescheduled her to September. So we're excited that she's going to be able to speak with us next month. And with that, we appreciate everyone being on. Natalie, thank you so much again for sharing everything with us. We're excited to get your materials, and I'll send that out to everyone. And I hope I can speak with everybody next month. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, everyone, for attending.